And now, get ready to experience her like never before as she debuts her one-woman show here in Miami. Put your hands together for Cindy-Ann Boisson!
We are here. We did it. Thank you. You know, we did this show back in March, and we sold out in Fort Lauderdale. And then Will and Theatre suggested, they were like, why don't you bring your show to Miami? And I was like, well, I don't speak Spanish. And they were like, Cindy-Ann, don't be silly. You have to speak Creole, we're in Little Haiti. Ça passe. You know, my Cindy-Ann Boisson is actually my stage name. And each time before I come on stage and do my thing, I go through this phonic ritual with the host, where they're like, Cindy-Ann, real quick, how do you say your last name? And I'm like, Boisson. 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 Brassois. No. Boisson. There you go. It's French. It's French. Got it. Cindy-Ann, I got it. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for your next comedian. She's a very good friend of mine, and soon to be a very good friend of yours. Put your hands together and welcome on stage my good friend, Cindy-Ann Boisson. They never get it right. They never get it right. My government-recognized name is Cindy-Ann Jane Boisson. And the government never gets it wrong. I wish Uncle Sam will mess up sometimes, you know. Life would be so much less taxing, you know. My street names are Sin, both spelled with a C. Reds, as in the color red, as in the shortened version of Red Woman. A name that shaped so much of my identity. And as that endearing catcall from them streets. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. Full disclosure, I was born and raised in Trinidad, but I am from Trinidad and Tobago. People get very hung up on the concept of a twin island republic, you know. This guy once said to me, he's like, Cindy-Ann, do you have to say both names all of the time? Like, how can you be from two places? I likened it to me saying that I now live in the United States of America, when the truth is I've only ever lived in one state. And I question all the time, are we even that united? Like most immigrants, I over-explain my heritage all the time. It's a verbal diary so that I feel seen, accepted, understood, respected. It's a coping mechanism and in a lot of ways very empowering. Like a coworker once asked me to tell him something about my heritage. I was like, here we go. I'm like, well, I am from Trinidad and Tobago. We call it Trini for short, or Trinbago. I am what they call a Trini to the bone. We are the Mecca of steel pan and calypso, and I bragged about a world-renowned carnival. Oh, he missed most of it. The only thing he commented on, he was like, oh, carnival. I've never done the carnival, Cindy-Ann. I've done the Royal Caribbean. Done the MSC, I've done Norwegian, but I've never done the carnival. I left that job because you know what they say. Show me your coworkers and I'll tell you who you are and why you should leave that job. My American friend, Joni, when he learned of Trinidad and Tobago, he summed it up beautifully. He was like, Cindy-Ann, it's 2 islands? Oh my gosh. And one is larger than the other? Oh, Cindy-Ann. This sounds a lot like my ex-wife's breast. Oh my gosh. The larger of the two is more fun, gets all of the attention. And the smaller of the two is where people go to relax and just fall asleep. I'm like, yes, Joni, yes. I left Trinidad 14 years ago. Not because I was poor, hungry, or lacked shelter. You know, it's interesting what people assume that to be the life of third world countries. Uncle Lou, this YouTube sensation, ranted on when the men's soccer team, the US men's soccer team, lost to Trinidad and Tobago at the World Cup qualifying games 2017.
You lose to Trinidad and Tobago. I can't even say that with a straight face. They have 1.3 million people. We have 330 million. There's more Americans inside of a Walmart right now than the total population of Trinidad and Tobago. And we lose. Trinidad and Tobago. They're out there running around barefooted, haven't eaten since Christmas, and they beat the U.S. men's team. What am I supposed to do with all this stuff now? Look, I can get the hat, I went out and bought the shirt or the jersey, whatever they call it in soccer. Look at this. Look, I bought one of these things. Look. I went out and bought one of these things. Now what am I supposed to do with this?
I have a few suggestions for Uncle Lou. Look, I'll be honest. I have run around the street barefooted because I love it. And well, because in Trinidad we have water and we could take a bath, you know? And maybe I had eaten enough or too much and needed to sweat it out. Uncle Lou said, there are more people inside of a Walmart right now than the total population, Trinidad and Tobago. He might be right. There are a lot of Americans inside of Walmart. But we've all seen the videos of the people of Walmart. Should he be that proud? I mean, it was a funny video when I simmered down and I lost the desire to stab him in his neck. I'm so protective of my home. I'm very protective of my loved ones. I've never stabbed anyone in the neck in real life. But in my dreams, the body count is discomforting. In 2018, I invited my American friend G to visit Trinidad. Huh. I picked G up in the airport and we have the following conversation. G. Oh my gosh, Cindy-Ann! You guys have a lot of cars! Oh, and buildings! Oh my gosh, Cindy-Ann, you guys have buildings? And people? Oh my gosh, Cindy-Ann, you guys have a lot of people. Me? Okay, so you did not expect that? G. I'm sorry, Cindy-Ann, but I don't know. I thought I would come here and see people sitting on the sidewalks, covered in flies, running around bare-feeted, hadn't eaten since Christmas. She's like, I'm sorry, Cindy-Ann, I really am. You know, I got here and this place is gorgeous. The people here are beautiful. I love it here. I take any compliment like a mud bath and my skin glows because you know mud is good for the skin. And the glow obliterates any thought of me stabbing G in her neck. So the body count stays the same. The mischievous side of me, though, wanted to tell G that I actually got to Trinidad 2 weeks before her and imported the cars myself. Erected all the buildings personally, just traffic some people in, you know, just to give the facade of a developing nation. But Mark Twain said it best. Never waste a lie. 14 years ago wasn't the first time I left Trinidad. In 2005, my son Keegan and I migrated to Plantation, Florida. Ian, my husband, migrated 2 years after we got married, and so this move was an attempt to reignite the fire, to amalgamate, to cohabitate, to use my God-given canal as the wildlife corridor it was designed to be. I needed sex, more sex, from him. Long-distance relationships can get very messy. Marriage sometimes can get a little disorderly. Life can be disorderly. Keegan, my son, he was 10 at the time, and he didn't want to leave Trinidad. He didn't want to have to leave his friends and school, and I get it, because I was once 10 years old too. But also, he was 10. I didn't give a shit what he wanted. So in July 2005, we migrated to Florida. Well, if you can call 4 months migration. We spent 4 months in Florida. Keegan hated it. He cried every single day, mainly because he was bullied in school. For his accent, he felt lonely, alienated, unseen, unheard. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life. I mean, my vaginal canal was enjoying the regular trips of transport in and out and up and down its corridors. I was working in Miami at the time, so I would take the train and the bus to work. One day, I get on the train and I sit next to this perfect stranger. And she happens to be Trini to the bone. Or there's an immediate connection. She says to me, she's like, girl, I left Trinidad years ago and I went straight to New York. My son was 10 at the time, and he hated it. I didn't know anybody in New York, but Gail had nothing else. I didn't have no reason to go back home. I was a single mother and a nurse, so he was left home to his own devices while I worked tirelessly. He practically raised himself. You say, well, he's in his 20s now, on drugs. We do not have a relationship. He hates me. Gail, I wish I could turn back the hands of time. This lady has no idea what I am going through. Her words echo. Keegan is 10. He hates it. Her story is unfolding again, only this time I am her and her son is my son. I say nothing. The ride home that day seems long. That evening, I get home, I sit Ian down, and I tell him about my encounter with a stranger on the train, and I announce that I'm taking my son and we are moving back to Trinidad. I reasoned that, well, I could always find another husband. So modest. But I needed to do right by my son. Ian has come to expect anything from me. Anything. When we started dating and things got serious, Ian suggested, he was like, I think we should introduce our parents. My mom to your dad. So one evening, we take our parents to dinner, and as we're having dinner, Ian's mom says to my dad, so, tell me, how was Cindy-Ann like growing up? My father, without skipping a beat, goes, very frightening. Father, rude. Also, don't speak with food in your mouth. Ian also isn't Keegan's dad. I didn't give him permission to be Keegan's dad. I could admit to that now. I assumed the role of both mother and father. I thought it was best. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And because I was, and I still am, opposed to the idea of shared custody, Keegan lived with me full time. I established all the rules. I made all the decisions. I called every single shot. Let the record show I have perfect aim. Let the record also show I'm very selfish. I'm very selfish. I didn't want anybody else helping me raise my son. And I also didn't want to have to be burdened with the responsibility of having to reestablish my household rules every other weekend. You know the rules. And because I guess Keegan's dad lacked the intestinal fortitude to take me up on it, I won. Or did I? It came with a lot of sacrifices and harsh lessons. But I take comfort in knowing that every dysfunction is in fact a way of functioning. And even in parenting, quality trumps quantity. I was a quality mom. Ian also has a daughter. And I didn't try to be a mom to her either. Because just as much as I didn't want anybody helping me raise my kid, I didn't want to be burdened with having to raise anybody else's kid and mess up their established household rules. You know the rules. Ian respected my decision. The next morning, I called my dad. Hi, Dad. I haven't said hi, Dad, to my father in 3,557 days. I lost him on September 13th, 2014. It was sudden, unexpected, painful, gut-wrenching. I'm devastated. You know, Dad and I shared a very special bond. It was telepathic. 2 days before Dad passed, I actually dreamt he died. I saw myself walking through the airport, sobbing uncontrollably. I knew something was wrong. I've somehow never managed to dream the winning Powerball numbers. I guess I need to strengthen my bond with the lottery gods. Although Dad was 42 years older than I was, he never judged my unconventional decisions, and there were a lot. I think in some ways he was amused by it. Like I must have been about 14 or 15 years old when I had this idea to saute canned sardines in coconut milk. It smelled promiscuous. And it tasted morally wrong. My father ate it all up with a smile. Oh, no. The correct assumption is that I'm a terrible cook. I come from a long line of awful cooks. Mom was hopeless in the kitchen. Like she would make red bean soup, and with the remainder red beans, concoct this unethical pot of chili con carne. I guess Dad's palate was compromised, you know. Our kitchen was the first Hell's Kitchen. Only I called it the kitchen from hell. There were no favorite meals coming out of the Boisson's household. Dad's passing shattered my heart. I'm grieving. Grief is so complex. You know, prolonged grief is described as a disorder. I guess like life, death too can be disorderly. Death is so mysterious. Like we are conditioned to believe that when people die, they're expected to rest in eternal life, like rest in eternal peace, rest in a place that looks like heaven. After death, we are the healthiest ever. No illnesses, no pains, no broken bones. And the PR department sells heaven like it's stress-free. Pearly gates, golden streets, trees of life. I mean, you can never tire. Damn, the dead probably never even get hungry. The more I think of it, the dead are probably running around heaven barefooted, haven't eaten since Christmas. Uncle Lou was describing heaven. Trinidad is heaven. My dad isn't resting. It's been almost 10 years, and he wasn't a lazy man. He was a great teacher, tailor, mathematician, and he loved gardening. I don't suppose he'll have a lot of job as a teacher or tailor or mathematician in heaven, but rest assured, no serpent is entering the Garden of Eden under my father's watch. My dad is gardening in peace. My father's government-recognized name was George Boisson. It's French. His street names were Santa Claus. He was Black Santa before it was trendy. And Mr. King, he was a king of the streets. He was noble. He was my king. My parents always felt like God's way of telling me that I was his favorite. He gifted me two amazing humans for me to call home to my heart. When I lost Dad, I lost the final part of that home. I lost the first part when I lost my mom to colon cancer on December 27th, 1996. It's been a long time. Mom's government-recognized name was Jane Frances Boisson. It's French. Her street names were Lucille, Janie, Mother. Oh, she was a mother to so many, and a mother effort to a few. I'm an orphan. You know, the word orphan is used to define children who lose their parents. But when adults lose their parents, we become orphans too and experience the same psychological problems. And only we're not placed in orphanages and we don't benefit from annual toy drives. Instead, we seek grief counseling, we join codependency groups, we become addicts, or we become a comedian. I've done them all. I learned of Mom's passing, of Mom's illness, 6 months before she passed. And back then, we didn't know much about cancer, so that the news was received as a death sentence. Man, I was so goddamn angry. I felt cheated out of a mother-daughter relationship we were working so hard to foster. I was a young mom too, and so I was finally beginning to understand and appreciate the many life lessons. Oh, I was defeated, suicidal. The fact that Mom's passing was not directly linked to the unethical, immoral foods spun out of the kitchen provided some comfort. But man, I was really defeated. Growing up, Mom and I had the typical mother-daughter relationship where she knows everything. And she did. I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing. Mom was very conventional. I was not. I must have been about 19 years old when I saw my mother sipping on a beer for the first time. Meanwhile, I got drunk for the first time at the age of 13. Thank you. Thank you. Mom was strict. Oh, I was rebellious. Like my teenage years were stormy. Not like adult film star stormy. More like Hurricane Andrew stormy. Like I love to dance, I love to party, I love to drink alcohol and just disturb the normal conditions of the atmosphere. Whereas Dad was calm and patient, Mom was not. I must have been about 17 years old when I was snapped out of bed by my both parents. Get up. get dressed. That day, we pilgrimaged to the Mount St. Benedict Abbey for me to be exorcised. Frightening. Mom was convinced I was possessed. As we got to the priest's office and the priest asked us to sit, and after some discussion, he asked my both parents to exit the office. He wrapped my head in his stole, and he drenched me in holy water. I was amused by all of this. Nothing happened. So either I was never possessed, or I still am. The priest vowed to my parents, he's like, she's just a rebellious teenager. The ride home was awkward. I remember at some point my dad goes, anybody feeling for Chinese food? I was so tempted to be, my demons feeling. My demons feeling for red bean soup and chili con carne. Oh gosh. Mom was unpredictable. She was bold, she was courageous, she was caring, she was smart, she was funny. We're a lot alike in many ways, except if I'm being completely honest. She was a much better version of me. She wasn't tainted by society, and she didn't care what anyone had to say about anything ever. She was free-spoken, and she would say the most outlandish things. Whenever we had guests over and Mom felt, okay, it was time for them to leave, she would gesture to me. And that meant for me to get the broom and stand behind the door with it held upside down. I don't have any proof if there's any truth to this superstition. I don't know. What I do know is if I ever visit someone home and I see someone standing behind a door with a broom held upside down, I am out. Growing up, she would say things to me. She's like, Cindy-Ann, if you have premarital sex, you're going to go crazy. She was a certified psychiatric nurse, so I had every reason to believe her. I always joked that Mom got the job in the asylum because she knew she belonged in one and found a way to beat the system by becoming a nurse. Same facility, different benefits. When I was about 12 years old and entering high school or secondary school, the book list called for a Good News Bible. Lucille told me
to let the teachers know that I carry around a Bible in my heart. Okay, what? The teachers were not impressed. At 19, when I got my first job and I was getting ready to go out to work, Mom sat me down. She's like, listen, Cindy-Ann, you're going out there in the world of work. You're going to meet all kind of people from all different walks of life. And let me tell you something. People does lie. Learn to lie too. Okay, Lucille, with the Bible in my heart. It's no wonder I have trust issues. But man, was she right? People do lie all the time. And, well, I guess I, too, have learned to lie. I was still living at home when I got pregnant. And I remember telling my mother, I'm like, you know, it wasn't planned. She said, eh? Well, it wasn't not planned. What happened, Cindy-Ann, you fall asleep? Were you raped? No? All right, well, then it was planned. Okay, touche. Touche, Lucille. Her only concern was that I knew who the father was. Thankfully, I did. I do. I think. Maybe that's why Keegan's dad never fought me in anything. Janie must have gotten to him first and be like, "You're sure that is your child?" Keegan was 18 months when Mom passed. Man, she loved him like only a maternal grandmother could. A love cushioned in pride and certainty. Paternal grandmothers could never. Too much doubt and uncertainty. Two nights before Mom passed, she asked to speak with us individually. My dad, my brother, myself. I don't remember everything she said to me, but I remember her asking me to be patient with Keegan. She said, "Cindy-Ann, because if he's anything like you, buckle up." And she pleaded with me. She's like, "I want you to promise me that you are going to do right by your son." Crazy mom stories aside, I never doubted her love for us. She lived for my brother and I. My brother was the apple of her eye. I was the eye of her hurricane. When Mom passed, we were right by her side. We all were. As they took her away. As fate would have it, when my dad fell ill, I was here in the United States of America. Thousands of miles away. Migration came with a lot of sacrifices. You know, it changed the dynamics of the relationship with my dad. Less talks, less intimate moments, less canned sardine sorted in coconut milk. Migration is me watching the landscape of a home that I know vanish, just like that. It's me having to grapple with the death rattle as I lose loved ones one phone call after the other. The death rattle of my dad was the loudest, and enough for me to regret ever leaving Trinidad. Migration isn't all razzmatazz and unbelievably good return policies. Jesus. Unbelievably good return policies. Listen, you can buy something, use it, return it, and get back all your money. Yes, please. Yes, please. Migration is that stranger on the train, alienated, remorseful. Migration is me. It's you. It's so many of us here, confuting the stigma attached to immigrants. Hey, Dad. Keegan and I are moving back home. Dad was indifferent when we left Trinidad, but he could not hide how thrilled he was when I told him we were moving back home. October 2005, Keegan and I returned to Trinidad, and life went right back to normal. Keegan went back to school with his friends, back to his old swim team, and well, once again, my vaginal canal was being underutilized. But I was home, now living. Is here we conceive me, is here I go dead. That was my anthem. In July 2009, very unexpectedly, Keegan asked me to migrate to Florida. I was like, listen, partner, remember being bullied in school? Remember feeling lonely, unseen, unaccepted? Remember those days? But he was a swimmer. And he had researched a coach he wanted to train with in Coral Springs, Florida. I was 22 years old when I had Keegan. I was young. I didn't know much about life, but man, I was so fierce when it came to protecting him. There's this story about this girl who broke into this house, ate the baby's porridge, broke the baby's chair, slept on the baby's bed, and escaped unharmed. Not under my watch. Just stabbed that bitch in her neck. He's my miracle baby. During my 3rd trimester, I awoke to a pool of blood in my bed, and my gynecologist confirmed I had placenta previa and confined me to complete bed rest. Still living at home, Mom dug deep to nourish me. No red bean soup and chili con carne, ever. One day during one of my visits, my gynecologist said, he's like, you know, Cindy-Ann, you're going to have a C-section. I cried for days. I deemed myself a total failure. Natural childbirth is a woman's rite of passage. I feel it's the labor pain, the screaming, the bawling, the yelling. That's what prepares us for those turbulent teenage years. And I wanted that experience. A C-section, though, turned out to be a lifelong gift. I was able to choose the day Keegan was born, and I chose June 3rd, Mr. King's birthday. I don't know what that means to the astrology believers, but to me, it means day of love. I breastfed Keegan for 6 months. For 3 months, he got breast milk only. I know. These Trinidad and Tobago surprised the shit out of me, too. I employ the lamb method, the lactate amenorrhea method. It's a proven contraceptive, and it's supposed to help you bond with your baby. A couple months later, I was pregnant again. This time, I opted to have elective cosmetic liposuction of my uterus. I had an abortion. Mom was ailing. I was emotionally fragile, scared, broken. I did what was best for me and for everyone else involved. Abortion is in fact healthcare. I've always loved kids, and I thought I would have more children. But in 2008, I had a miscarriage, and that left an indelible mark in my heart. I was done trying. During one of my annual visits, my doctor felt this very hard lump in my stomach. And after we did tests and I had no symptoms of anything ever, he suggested that I do a hysterectomy. When you're ordered to have a hysterectomy, they assign you to a social worker whose job is to tell you about the procedure, what's going to happen, and what you can expect after the procedure. During my first phone call with the social worker, she told me what the procedure would look like, and then she listed the things, the after effects that I can expect to feel. She was like, well, Miss Boisson, you can expect crying spells, anxiety, depression, vaginal dryness, constipation, reduced sex drive, infertility. I listened. I said, can I ask you something? Is it possible I've had a hysterectomy already? Because I have been experiencing most of these symptoms all my life. And maybe, I am the first woman to have ever had a C-section, elective cosmetic liposuction of my uterus, a miscarriage without a uterus. I mean, after all, I am God's favorite. And God is known to perform miracles, especially when it pertains to childbirth. The social worker was not entertained. Infertility, though, is the one side effect that bothered me. It changed the way I looked at myself as a woman. Another part of my identity gone, just like that. In 2015, I had a hysterectomy, and I learned two things. It was, in fact, fibroids, and healthcare is a ripoff in every currency. I can't confirm or deny if I've ever experienced any of the side effects, but I do know that my surgeon gifted me with a tightened vaginal canal that continues to be the gift that keeps on giving and coming. I have had a ruptured appendix. I've had a C-section. I've had elective cosmetic liposuction of my uterus. I've had a miscarriage. I've had a hysterectomy. And I can stand here today with conviction and say that a Brazilian wax is still the worst thing I've ever put my lady parts through. I mean, are Brazilians that aggressive? I left piece of my vagina with her. I was like, keep it. keep it. Keegan was perfect. He's my only living baby. He was charming, he was handsome, he was smart, he was cheeky. I loved being his mom. Like I was young too, and so in many ways, it felt like he was my baby brother. And so that I created this space for him to feel safe, to tell me anything. Too many things. At the age of 7, Keegan says to me, Mommy, I want to get married when I am 15 years old. And I want my bride to be pregnant when she walking up the aisle. I whispered, premarital sex will drive you crazy. I said, Keegan, really? 15 years old? Do you think that's a good idea? You're not going to know. He's like, Mommy. Relax. If there's any doubt in my mind that that baby is not mine, I'm taking my wife on the Jerry Springer show. And Jerry Springer is going to get to the bottom of it. Lucille would have hauled his ass to Mount St. Benedict Abbey in a jiffy. But he trusted me, and I was determined to give him the world, and swimming had become his world. In 2005, when I moved back to Trinidad, I never imagined that I would just up, son, and leave again. Sin, reds, would not have left. But Cindy-Ann Boisson knew she had to keep good the promise made to her mom and do right by her son. So on January 1st, 2010, we migrated to Coral Springs, Florida. Keegan enrolled in high school, he joined the swim team, and immediately started making friends. This time, he was ready. I was not. The high school dress code was vexing. I insisted Keegan wore polos and khakis. And of course, the Bible in his heart. He resisted at first until he realized I had absolutely no control over what the girls wore. Oh, an abundance of 14 and 15-year-old girls for him to handpick his bride and impregnate her and walk down the aisles and then take on the Jerry Springer show. I wasn't ready for the weather. It was winter when we moved here, and I don't know, I guess me thinking it's called the Sunshine State expected just sunshine. Nope. We arrived to wind-chilled factors, feel-like temps, cold fronts. I'm yet to find someone who can clearly explain to me what a wind-chill factor is. They're like, Cindy-Ann, it's when there's a wind, and then there's a chill, and then it's a factor. It's a wind chill, and it factors in the wind chill. And so the temps feels like something that it's not. Wind chill factor. Okay. Cold fronts, the deceit. Why are we calling it a cold front? When it affects our entire body. Call it cold body. And then the weather would change so quickly. Like most days, I will walk around like Puss in Boots, dressed in mismatched layers of clothing, looking like an unhoused homeless immigrant. Migration is having to adjust and accept different climates. I had so much trouble, I struggled. With the story of that stranger on the train etched in my mind, I knew I had to find the perfect job. Something close and nearby. And so my first job was actually at Macy's in the ladies' shoe department. I had never done retail before, so I had no idea what to expect. And well, you know what they say. Expect the unexpected. And when the unexpected happens, quit. I unexpectedly offended a Singaporean lady when I referred to her as Chinese. She said, "I'm actually from Singapore." I said, "Okay, that's nice. Chinese? I'm not proud of this. I'm not proud, but culturally, growing up in Trinidad and Tobago, we refer to everyone of East Asian descent as Chinese. All Asian food, Chinese food." Migration is learning that type of thinking is racist and offensive. And I get it. I get it now. Because as a Trinidadian living in the United States of America, cannot tell you how many times we spend as every other Caribbean island explaining to everyone that all of the Caribbean islands are not neatly packed in Kingston, Jamaica. I had so much trouble assimilating, man. Even my vaginal canal was experiencing a low tide. Transportation of goods got very patchy. I convinced myself, I'm like, in 3 years, once Keegan leaves for college, I'm hauling my ass back to Trinidad. Migration is lying to yourself that it's only for a short time. I spent the next 3 years counting down the days and taking in the American way of life because it's different, you know. And much of the American culture rendered me speechless. I remember the first day I saw someone dip in their pockets, take out a tiny bag, place it over their hands, and then pick up their dog poop. I was like, what? Madness! Like I wanted to yell, yo! Leave it! That's good fertilizer for the soil! But they would think I'm a lunatic. One day I'm taking a stroll and I see this lady. She's pushing a stroller and there are 3 puppies in it and each puppy is wearing sunglasses and she says to me, she's like, "These are my grandpuppies." I was so tempted to ask if she was the paternal grandmother or the maternal grandmother, just to establish the bond. We lived in a small community, so that each morning before I made my way out, I would see my neighbor, and we would greet each other every single day. "Hey, Joan." "Hi, Cindy-Ann." "Hey, Joan, morning." "Hi, Cindy-Ann." Every single day. We're neighbors. One day, I get a glimpse of Joan as I'm taking advantage of the unbelievably good return policies. Unbelievably good return policies. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can buy something, use it, return it, and get back all your money. A familiar face, I get excited. I'm like, hi, Joan. Who are you? Shocked, hurt, embarrassed. I'm like, it's me, Cindy-Ann. That woman has no idea who I am. To her, I'm just a face in a specific place. She has no idea who I am. And while moving forward, I have no idea who the fuck she is either. Migration is being unrecognized. It's being anonymous. It's very different to the sitcom Cheers. There was a sitcom years ago called Cheers, and they would sing, where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. Not here. Cheers is a farce. In 2013, Keegan leaves for college. And as I'm coming to terms with empty nest syndrome, I realized that this hen doesn't quite know her cock. Now, let's put a pin in it. Empty nest syndrome, by the way, terrible name for what parents experience when their kids move out. Because things that live in a nest, they don't grieve when their kids leave. They abandon the nest and they move on with their lives, never to recognize their children ever again. But for the purpose of this show, I'm going through empty nest syndrome. I realize I'm like, as a hen in my nest, I don't know my cock. I mean, I know the cock, but I don't know this cock. When Ian and I got married, I never divorced my dad, and it damaged my marriage. It was the world's most boring threesome ever. Like, Mr. King was my best friend. He was my financial advisor. He was my confidant. Ian was just a face in a specific place. Only we do not tell each other good morning. And he would definitely recognize me in Macy's because I'll be using his credit card. Ian and I have been married for 24 years, and thank you. 24 years. And I've never spoken about my marriage publicly. I've never made a public announcement. I've never posted on social media. I've never made a Facebook status, never. And for years, I judged myself by it because a scroll through Facebook tells me that married couples are best friends, love each other to the moon and back, would ride and die together, they're partners for life. I'm like, am I doing this shit wrong? Because the only Facebook status I could think of is, let's see where this goes. My marriage is like a carnival. Not like a Royal Caribbean or MSC or Norwegian, like a carnival of rides. You know, it's been a roller coaster ride through a haunted house. And then you end up in an escape room. And not any regular roller coaster ride either. You know the roller coaster rides with the loops and turns, and at some point somebody vomit, you pass out, you lose shit. We escape the haunted house phase by combating one demon in-law after the other. We're in the escape room phase of our marriage now, and I don't know if we will come out separately or if we'll come out together. Jump right back on that roller coaster and ride and die together. Ian is calm, stable, he's methodical. He sees the world as either black or white. I am none of those things. I am unstable, stormy, frightening, and I see the world through a kaleidoscope. I have anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCDC, HGTV. Possibly possessed with a Bible in my heart. You hand all these ingredients down to messy cook shit, terrible cook shit gets messy. Sometimes my life smells like canned sardines sauteed in coconut milk. As I'm coming to terms with trying to figure out my next move, I enrolled in a stand-up comedy class. I'd always loved comedy and storytelling. And Google says laughter alleviates stress. I have a very complicated relationship with Google, but I buy into this. On June 30th, 2014, I performed stand-up comedy for the first time. Oh. I had found my thing. I had found my tribe. I was so excited. I remember calling Daddy and saying, man, I told him, I said, I did it. And I'm going to send you a video. And I caution him that I use a lot of profanity. Mr. King says to me, he's like, my love, I've known you all your life. Are you forgetting about that one time when you were almost expelled from high school for bringing pornographic cartoon images to school? I know who you are. I wasn't expelled because Daddy was a teacher at the school. Nepotism warms my heart every single time. His only comment when I started comedy, the only thing my father said to me, he was like, my love, you'll need a bigger closet, you know? You know you love to dress. Where you'll put all those clothes? Poor fella. He didn't know about the unbelievably good return policies. Unbelievably good return policies. I'm telling you guys, you could buy something, use it, return it, and get your money back. Yes, please. My parents never got to see me perform. Well, they did. I've always been a performer. And I console myself into thinking, well, they're always with me, right here, right now. And maybe beside you too. Ghosts occupy a lot of space. When Dad passed, I was at the lowest point of my life and stopped performing completely. No mother, no father, no home for my heart. My childhood home was handed down to my brother, so access to that changed. I've always had a very strained relationship with my brother. Sibling rivalry can be so frustrating and exhausting. It would be so much easier if he would just accept I was the favorite. I love him though, I love my brother. He has a liver full of alcohol. White rum specifically, but a heart full of gold. My son now off to college. My husband and I trapped in an escape room, just looking at each other. Marriage is too much eye contact. It's too much. It's too much eye contact. It took me about a year before I started performing again. Stand-up comedy became an outlet for me to process my life as an adult immigrant, desperately trying to reconcile my identity. Carving out a space in this male, white female industry. One of the first jokes I wrote was about me discovering that apparently I have been black all my life. It was a funny joke too, it was a really good joke. It was where my neighbor said to me one day, she's like, you know, Cindy-Ann, you're my first black friend. I was like, what? And then she's like, but you're not black. I'm like, yeah, but you think we're friends? It's a good joke. It's a good joke. And so I'm telling this joke at a club one night, and I unintentionally offend an African American because he thought that I thought I was not black. I tried explaining my heritage to him. I'm like, look, I am actually, in fact, red. But it didn't resonate. I'm telling the same joke at another club, and I unintentionally offend a white American because she thought that I thought I was white. I tried explaining my heritage to her. I'm like, listen, ma'am, I am, in fact, red. In 2020, during the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and remember the dark times? With all the Black Lives Matter movement marches and protests, I'm having a conversation with my friends back home, and I unintentionally offend them because they thought that I forgot that I was red. I try explaining my heritage. I'm like, I had to explain to them the American way of life. I'm like, listen, I am in fact black. But it didn't resonate. Migration is realizing you have to adjust and adapt. It's me learning that the street name Reds is inappropriate. is actually considered sexual harassment. And illegal in some states. Who knew? It's me just out here creating my own rhythm, picking up bits and pieces of things that make sense to me, grieving the loss of so many parts of my identity. I feel like immigrants should be given paid time off to grieve the loss of our identity. I say 2 weeks after the naturalization process. Migration isn't always about seeking a better life, but it's always about having to adapt to a different life. I'll be lying if I didn't say to you guys that there are some things I don't miss in Trinidad or I miss in Trinidad. I'll also be lying to you if I didn't admit to liking some things in the United States of America. If I'm being completely honest, nowhere quite feels like home. Except this. This feels like home. Me standing here, telling you guys stories about my life, admitting very early on that my mom told me that I need to learn to lie. Standing here and going on to tell you one lie after another, and earning your trust. That feels right to me. This year, I, Cindy-Ann Boisson, it's French, this red, white, black, Trinbagonian, Trini to the bone, naturalized citizen, honored 10 years in this white male, white female industry. And I know it's only because I am, in fact, God's favorite.